in France, or are you living in France now?
So I am sort of in between the two
Yeah,
chairs. You
that's
know,
really cool.
I sometimes like to be a little bit of a nomad or having one foot in one place and another foot in another place.
Yeah.
So that's what's happening right now. And
What?
I look forward. Go ahead.
No.
Sorry.
What's the weather like in France? Because it is pretty frigid here right now. I'm in
It's
Virginia.
cold.
Yeah.
Cold. Yeah. Where are you exactly, Jeff?
I'm in Virginia, so I'm
Virginia. Yeah.
East
Okay.
Coast,
Yeah.
mid East Coast. So it's
Yeah.
I got an alert on my phone that said it was a cold. It was a winter warning with no weather. Right, it's just
No.
cold. It's so cold for our area right now. So, um, yeah, I'm excited to just learn more about you. I looked at your notes and I read your bio and.
Okay.
Let me tell everyone who I'm talking to today. So today we're going to welcome Regina Huber. Did I say that right? Huber.
Yes. Great. Yes.
Yeah, Regina Huber to the podcast. Regina is the CEO of Transform Your Performance, a transformational leadership coach and a global speaker with a remarkable journey spanning 5 continents. After facing a life-altering business setback in Brazil, she built her life from scratch in New York City, turning adversity into a springboard for growth. Regina's mission is to empower bold, heart centered leaders to thrive in uncertainty and lead with confidence. She's also the author of Living My Freaking Amazing Life. I can't wait to hear more about that. And the host of the Rise to Lead podcast. So, Regina, welcome to the show. I'm excited to get to know you, learn more about you, your books, and all the things. So, I'm glad you're here with us today.
Thank you so much, Jeff. I am so happy to be here with you as well. I was really looking forward to this conversation. I had watched some shows and also, of course, read the description. So it's
Yes. It
right up
fits.
my alley.
Yes, right. It fits. And I try to tell everyone we just kind of go unscripted, try to keep
Mhm.
it as conversational. So if someone, the listeners, if they just walked up and was standing listening to two people talk, right? I try not to. I kind of pride myself on not meeting a stranger, right? So I enjoy good conversations and just seeing where they take us. But you're right. Just reading about you, learning more about you, and your story of resilience and reinvention. And you're going to have this pivotal moment that I'd love for you to share with us when you're looking to rebuild your life in New York because of this business setback that I want to know about that happened in Brazil. So kind of take me to from your setback Brazil. There's got to be some mindset shifts that is going to empower our audience and take us into New York. I think that's a great place to start.
Yeah, and it was a huge new chapter for me because actually what I had done in Brazil is I had just moved up from Argentina. So as you can see, I've lived in several different countries and different continents, which I love. I you could say I'm probably one of the reinvention masters.
Yeah.
Although we never really reinvent ourselves, we just discover different sides of who we are or different expressions of who we are in different chapters of our lives. And I believe that we build on the previous chapters every single time, even though we don't always do everything consciously. So some of it is, of course, also a result of our subconscious programming. In Brazil, I had built a brick and mortar business, and it had, um, taken me a good year to build that, if not more. I had put all my savings into it, all my energy into it. Before that, I should also just quickly mention I had owned a bed and breakfast, another brick and mortar business in Argentina. So this was my second business. And yeah, so I was really enthusiastic about it. It was going to be a dance studio and a holistic wellness studio.
Hmm.
And for the dance studio part, I had partnered up with somebody who had a big name in the market because otherwise it would have been almost impossible. I really love to dance, Jeff,
Yeah.
So this was my new baby. And yeah, dream project. I found a house for it. I had it built out. It didn't go totally without hiccups, but eventually it was ready. and it was beautifully painted, and we were getting ready for the inauguration party. I even had a friend who she's a samba singer, and she was going to bring her band. It was going to be a huge, lovely event. And just shortly before that, I found out that my business partner for one part of this business, so the business was mine, okay, but I had paid somebody for the brand and for some other, it was a collaboration project for part of this business. And it turned out that he had taken money from our mutual account for a second project that we had. And it was a big chunk of money, you know. So now, of course, I had to confront him, and I did. I asked him to pay me back, and he said he didn't have the money anymore. Apparently, he had bought himself a new car. While I did not have a car, and I put all my money into this business, So there was no getting out of this in a good way, or in my preferred way, I should say. So eventually I had to make the decision and break up this partnership and say, look, this is not working. I cannot work with you if you defraud me, if I cannot trust you anymore for this business, if you took money from the other potential project. So it was a really tough story for me, a tough situation, right?
Yeah.
I
Um,
Go ahead,
how
go ahead.
much? Give me an idea. I've got two questions because
Yeah,
I just this way my brain works. How
yeah,
much money are we talking about? And then is this a business relationship or is there a little bit of love here as well?
yeah. No, it was a friendship and a
Yeah,
business relationship.
I got
Okay,
you.
so it was not like a romantic relationship,
Yep.
which would have probably complicated even more. But even
Yes.
for a so-called friendship, it was very disappointing.
Yes. Still.
And
Yeah.
how much money? Well, all my savings, meaning I had bought this house, I had it built out. So we're talking about, $300,000 at
Wow.
the time. And of course, I paid everything cash because I would not get any loan, as I had an investor's visa, as I had in Argentina as well. I don't even remember the exact amount because, after some time, it loses its significance, you
Right.
know.
I understand.
Now, what happened is, to cut the story short a little bit, is eventually I opened the business. We had the inauguration party, but without his name, it was really hard to keep it open. And I eventually had to decide and make that very difficult decision to close this business, because it just wouldn't have made sense. The costs were too high. And yeah, and then what also showed up, which hadn't shown up before, was a problem with the documentation of the house when I wanted to sell it again. Now, of course, I was already selling everything cheap that I had bought, all the equipment and whatnot, because I wanted to sell everything quick to move on to the next chapter. But that
Right.
now had a problem too. So it required a lot of patience from me, and a lot of really faith. I also ended up suing the guy because there was no way of getting my money back in other ways. So yeah, it was a chapter in my life that that was tough on me.
Yeah.
Um,
Sounds like it. How does Sue and so, all right? So you're citizenship wise, you're a United States citizen on in Brazil on a
No, I'm
investor.
a German citizen with
German.
a
Okay.
United States green card.
All
But
right.
back
So
then, I actually had a green card in the US, and I had the Brazilian equivalent
got it.
because I had an investor's visa.
So
So
you
I got it.
for just so everyone knows, because each country has different. Like there's
Right.
some countries where I couldn't sue, even whether I was there legally or illegally. I wouldn't. U.S. is very different with that.
Mhm.
But so you're able to take advantage of the laws and all
Yeah.
those things. And it's okay. So that helps me there. And then how is there like real estate laws? Like here, everything is really, really back checked for lien, all the things to make sure that you don't have that. It doesn't sound like that was a case where you discovered some hiccups. Is that kind of is there real estate laws different and a little more relaxed there?
Look, I don't know why this didn't show up before, because yes, of course, there are regulations, just like in any other country that I know of, right? And I
Right.
know that, there's in certain areas sometimes more or less corruption, but I've also experienced a very big corruption case in Miami, so I wouldn't say this is limited to
Right.
Brazil. And what what happened is it somehow was not maybe checked properly by one of the lawyers. I do not know. There is sometimes money passed below the table, from one hand to the other. It happens all the time. So that definitely also happened in other areas that I was in touch with, although I never gave into it, I must say. And and so I don't really know the details of this, is the short
Gotcha.
answer, right? But I had to figure it out. So eventually it was resolved after quite a few months of additional costs, because I had to keep the place, I had to still pay water and electricity,
Yeah.
and all these things. And uh, so eventually, though, I made my way out of this deep hole that I had shoveled open for myself.
Yeah.
Because in the end, I take full responsibility.
Right. Yeah.
That doesn't mean that was it okay what he did. No, but I firmly believe that we create all our reality 100%. So why did I do that? Definitely not consciously or intentionally, but there was something that had me create the situation for myself. And then I had to remind myself that I was not a victim. And I think that's the mindset shift that we really need to make that decision, that we move out of victim mode into a more self-empowering mindset that actually allows us to have choices again.
I like that. I like the way that you frame that, to where you can only kind of waller in your decisions for so long before you have to own them, take action, and
Mhm.
start moving forward. And that
Right.
leads you into your next step. It moves you into New York.
Hmm.
You end up leaving Brazil and make your way into New York. Is that, and did we find, or you're looking for new ventures and new opportunities? Is that where we ended up? What helped you change that mindset shift? Where was you at when you were like finally like I'm done? So how did you was able to like I'm done with this, I'm putting it behind it, I'm moving on? What did that look
Yes,
like?
this is a really important question, right? And it's maybe different for different people. For me, what helped me is that I had studied a lot of holistic methodologies,
Yeah.
and that had given me really great insights into how the mind works, especially the subconscious, and how our energy works. And this helped me I could now apply to myself once I had made the decision that I actually, we need to realize first that we actually have a choice. It sometimes might look as if we don't have a choice, but we always have a choice, always, right? So it's really up to us to make that decision and see the choice. And, this is about second chance, right, Jeff? So you have
Yeah.
always the choice of a second chance. In fact, you have unlimited chances as long as you choose them, right? And we say life offers us a second chance, but actually it's us who offer ourselves those second chances, or third or fourth. Now, so going back to your question, well, I used what I had learned, first of all, on myself, and then I also had friends who also provided sessions for me, and who reached out, with a helping hand, and I still am in contact with some of them. I just had a talk, a call the other day with one of them, my friend Sabrina, who who is no longer in Rio de Janeiro at this point. She moved to Sao Paulo, but we're still in contact, and we actually might want to do a project together this year.
Yeah, cool.
So, these friends are very, very important in those situations, right? It could be just one friend. It doesn't matter how many, but I think most people have that, at least one person. So also really, don't be ashamed or afraid, or hesitant about asking for help, because that is something that I also needed to learn more of. I had always done so many things by myself. I'd moved to different countries and whatnot. Now, yes, so then I made a decision. Eventually, it wasn't from one day to the next. Okay. Also, because I was still cleaning up the mess, there were many steps to be done. And, a lot of people sometimes say in Brazil, it's harder to close a company than to open one, although that's
Yeah.
also complicated enough. So it was there was a lot to be done. But most importantly, I had to support myself emotionally and energetically and all these things. And also to allow myself to make new plans. It
Right.
was not clear from the beginning that it would be New York. It was not clear from the beginning what I was going to do. It was a process. And eventually I did move to New York, but I still had one foot. I said this at the beginning of our talk here today, of our conversation, one foot in one place, another in another, right?
Right.
And at the time, I was so reluctant to leave Rio de Janeiro. I love this city. It's a beautiful place. It's a tough place, but it's a beautiful place. And I love the dancing there and everything. Um, and so I put everything in storage, which was the next big thing. That storage thing. Oh my God. First of all, they stole so much stuff of my things, and then they lost things and whatnot, but they stole a lot, actually.
Yeah. Yeah. They
Things
sold your
are
stuff.
broken. Uh, you know, but eventually I also went back and sold the rest and gave a bunch of stuff away. One big detachment exercise was my 35 boxes of books in many different languages, and I loved those books, and I could not bring them with me. So unless I would do like a huge big move again, which I didn't want to do at the time.
Right.
So yeah, and a few other things, my bamboo bed from Bali and pieces that we just love. So yeah, detachment was a big topic for me at the time.
Yeah.
And then I landed in New York. But what's always exciting to me is when I land in a new city, that discovery. That's always such an exciting phase to me. I didn't really have a network in New York. I knew a few people, but they were extremely busy people, like, from working at this consulting firm, and then they would always travel, and there were not so many because I'd never lived in New York before, worked in that office before. So I really needed to build a network from scratch, and I didn't even know what my next company or project was going to be. So I needed to figure that out too. And it was a process, right, Jeff? I started thinking about, okay, so I have this very eclectic experience on several continents. I had been a business owner in Brazil and Argentina. I didn't want to do anything that was a brick and mortar business at that point. And I had leadership roles, at a big consulting firm and whatnot. I traveled a lot. What was I going to do with all this very eclectic experience that I had under my belt? And how could I turn this into something meaningful as a service to other people, right? And that's how my current business, Transform Your Performance, was born. Again, not from one day to the next, but over time. I went networking. I had to learn how to network because in this way I had never done it. It was also going to be a completely different business. There was a lot to learn, and that's how it came about eventually.
What does the business do now? How did you kind of is it
Mhm.
what is the main purpose and the main goal or focus of your business you have now?
Mhm. So I'm a transformational leadership coach. I support leaders, both in corporate or in organizations, and business owners in their leadership roles and in their careers. And I also offer, speaking engagements. I do speaking at companies. I have some other projects like trainings. I have created several frameworks. Three of them are leadership frameworks that I use as a basis for my coaching practice
Yeah.
and also for those workshops and trainings.
So you're able to kind of coach through you emphasize a lot of turning your adversities into opportunities.
Mhm.
Can you share an example of like how your work is now and how you help someone kind of see that realization to help seize that next opportunity?
Yeah, so I call it a so-called adversity
Yeah.
because it's not actually really one. I think we would do ourselves a favor if we moved away from judging or from evaluating situations or putting them into categories of good and bad. I think they all just are. They are experiences that we have had and that we have created for ourselves and that we now can use as an opportunity or stay stuck. Again, it's a choice, right?
Yeah.
And so if we do want to use it as an opportunity, then it's up to us to find that opportunity in that adversity. And any situation has an opportunity. So I also have started really calling my so-called enemies my allies.
Yeah.
They have helped me in that situation to have that experience and to, maybe I needed to learn a lesson, but maybe it was actually about something else. It's we always say, oh, we gain all this resilience. Yes, but do we really want more resilience through those experiences? I don't want more resilience. I already have enough.
Yeah. I'm tough enough.
Right? So I want to be able to really create more of what I want or what I would prefer. It's also one of the reasons why I added just recently a new methodology to my repertoire, which focuses a lot on this. It's for the very open-minded, I must say, because it does, require an open mind. But we can also work with other modalities, right? And one thing I do want to say is that uncertainty is not bad. Again, everything is uncertainty in life. So why would we dislike uncertainty so much if uncertainty could actually be your friend?
Yeah. How do you coach people through understanding that though? Because that's such a most folks are afraid of the unknown and they thrive within what, or they think they thrive within their comfort zones, right? How do you how push them into those uncertain moments and find clarity there?
Well, if those comfort zones were so comfortable, then people wouldn't talk about them so much.
Yeah.
I call it more like a convenience zone because once you become aware that you're in your comfort zone, usually you talk about it because you actually want to get out of it. It's not that comfortable and you just don't know how to, or you're afraid, right? But venturing into the unknown and embracing uncertainty can really, really open up possibilities that you would never have thought you had, that we might not even have dreamed of. And if you never take a risk, if you never venture out of that zone, which by the way, your unconscious might throw you out at some point anyway, and that it might actually be less comfortable than if you do it voluntarily,
Yeah.
right? Because your higher self or whatever your word for that is it will always challenge you in that way because your true self wants you to do what it came here to do, to say it in some way, right? So I believe that, there's opportunity, there's possibility in this uncertainty. And even if you decide to stay on the same lane in your same job or whatever it is that you maybe hate or whatever it is for you, then, or in the same relationship, right? Then you also don't know what's going to happen. You also don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, is there
A lot of
certainty at
folks
all?
a lot of I was a lot of folks tend to worry about if they put themselves first and their
Mhm.
needs or their wishes, right? Especially in business, they're worried about how it's going to affect the others that are either employees or partners or what have you. And that leads into a lot of uncertainty. I was having some conversations this week around that about
Mhm.
just person was like, as soon as I start having this conversation, it's going to really affect friendships and affect negative. It's going to create some negative vibes around it. Um, same type stuff, right? Of just people are afraid of the uncertainty that's going to come with just having a simple conversation. How do you help? What is that kind of nudge, or do you have a superpower? Is the best thing for folks to do that are struggling with that is to reach out for Regina and get some help.
Look, if you do not speak up about it, usually it turns into resentment. And who does that serve?
Yeah.
It turns into frustration. Who does that serve? Are you going to be more enjoyable to be around
Hmm.
with, or probably not? And eventually you probably will go down that path anyway. So I believe that everybody should put themselves in the center of their universe. We are already in the center of our universe. you know, because it's not about being careless. It's not that. It's actually not what that means. It means that you are here to do something that you came to do. Okay. Some call it a calling, some call it whatever. I don't know that I have a preferred word for it at all. Uh, but through that new methodology that I'm applying, I would probably just call it an experience. But what the gist of it is, like, you know, sometimes we try to save something that's unsavable.
Yeah.
And who benefits really? Anybody in the end? So if we're really honest with ourselves and also honest with the people around us, I think, that we actually do them a service when we're honest. And sometimes people are much more understanding than what we think. And if they're not, you know what? I mean, it's also, then they also need to deal with their own uh, emotions and their own attitude toward this. I'm not
You're
saying,
absolutely
yeah.
right. Having the conversation is it's the hardest step, the
Mhm.
difficult conversation. I've coached myself through it. I coach other people through it,
Mhm.
but just that first step. But I also had told someone here recently, like if the first step to just the clarity or the solution is having the conversation. Yes, everybody might get pissed off, but guess what? They're going. There's. It's going to lead to where we need to be. You can't just
Yeah.
skip having a conversation.
Yeah. And what if we change the language even? Why do we even call these difficult conversations?
Yeah.
You know, we're making it more difficult for ourselves.
Yep. That's
What
it.
if
Yeah.
we could find a different word or just call it a conversation? And I think, because it also makes a difference in how we frame things for ourselves, right? So
Yeah.
if we already call it a difficult, now what's the attitude we're going to approach this conversation with? We already feel challenged. We already feel like, oh, this is going to be hard, right? And this doesn't mean we should downplay the impact that our actions have on other people. Not at all. It's actually being respectful toward them by telling them the truth, you know, and
Yep.
by being transparent. I value transparent conversation or communication. So what if we could even just call it that, transparent communication? It's just a thought.
Yeah. That's good. That's a great way of putting it because we you use a negative word, you hit it right. I work in kind of some of that brain work, and have had the benefits of
Mhm.
trying to find those positive words, right? And you never be like, "Hey, I'm getting ready to go in here and have this positive conversation." We always frame it as a difficult conversation. some of the books you'll read is like overcoming difficult conversations or whatever. But you're spot on with why do we, we shouldn't just have the conversation. It don't have to be difficult. It's a conversation that needs to be had.
Yeah, it's just a conversation. I don't even know if I would call it positive because I mean that
Yeah,
also depends on how everybody takes it.
yeah,
It's just about, it's just a conversation and we will have certain results from the conversation and then we'll take it from there. We also need to know, we need to get this um di- we need to figure out what the other person even thinks because we oftentimes think we know, but do we really know?
yeah.
A lot
That's
of
what.
times we don't. Sorry.
No, you're. The other thing I was going to ask you, and you touched on it. I was reading about some of your stuff about your enemies,
Hmm.
and using those enemies or so-called enemies as your greatest teachers, without naming names or situations. That's
Hmm.
going to what that would bring whatever you'd like to, ever how you'd like to lead us here, but explain to folks what an enemy is to you, so they can kind of get in perspective of how they can use similar enemies in their life. Elaborate on that perspective of
Yeah,
can
I
you?
don't actually call them enemies, but I use that word to explain what I mean,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And it you could call them an adversary, but they are really not that. They're people we meet as we move along in our lives, right? And they help us co-create a certain experience. And so we both or more people have a role in it, and they might actually be, they might actually treat us like, shit, and they
Yeah.
might treat others totally completely differently. We are co-creating something together in some way. It's really a good exercise to become aware of how did this come about, right? And again, not in a judging way so much, but in a way that, okay, what could have been that, you know, what could have made me create this, in whether I didn't do my due diligence, or whatever it was, right? Or I said yes too quickly, or whether I trusted somebody that I found out later that was not trustworthy, whatever it is. But in some way we created this. So now, after studying this more in detail, the, so Brian Ridgway is somebody that I like to listen to in this sense, and he would say it's all a reflection. It's not really a pattern that repeats itself so much. It's a reflection of something that we need to be reminded of so we can transmute it. And usually that's, most of the time, it's an emotion like a sadness or a fear. Now, I don't want to go too deep into this because it's a bit complex, but it we 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 can somehow figure out a few details about why something actually happened if we just really take the time and don't only analyze the external circumstances, but our inner world.
Right. You you have the kind of last question I was going to ask you. You work through your coaching business through transform your performance. We've wrote books about this. You speak about this. What are some common barriers that you see your clients facing, just when trying to navigate their way? What are some common things that you see, and then is there a way that you can guide them, or how are you guiding them past those common commonalities?
Yes. So apart from leadership skills and more the leadership focused content that I support my clients with, when they need this or want this, right? I we work a lot on what we often call mindset, but it's not just that, right? It's a bit broader. We also work on energy. We'll work on business presence, so that they can gain visibility and be heard in meetings more. That oftentimes is something that women ask for. but not only. Or I help them with negotiations. Negotiating for self is what's really hard for a lot of people, and it used to be for me, right? And that's also one of the reasons why I want to help people do this, because it cost me a lot of money while I was an employee. And I want people to see that if you don't negotiate and you shy away because of the famous comfort zone again that we talked about before,
Yeah.
then you probably leave money on the table, right? But also about stepping up to the opportunity that you want. You can create it sometimes yourself. Like, does a job that you want not exist in your company, but you have really good, let's just assume you have good standing, and you are great at what you do. Why not invent it? Why not create it? And I think people oftentimes underestimate their possibilities.
That's a really it's a great way of putting it, is just underestimating possibilities. It's a great way to kind of close this out here. How, in your work, how do you want someone to get in touch with you?
I have my website,
Yeah,
transformyourperformance.com. So that's my company name, right?
yeah,
Transformyourperformance.com. I'm on LinkedIn. I also have a LinkedIn career growth strategies newsletter where I don't only share about careers, but also or career advancement, but also um, about leadership, about self leadership as well, which is always a basis for any leadership of others. And I have a YouTube channel too. And of course, my podcast, Rise to Lead. I would love for
yeah.
you to check that out.
Yeah, definitely. We'll make sure to bookmark all that. Can't thank you enough for spending time with us today, just to get to know you, right? And I think, and it's like I tell a lot of my guests, is I think our initial conversation is supposed to be that initial conversation, but there's nothing in the world that keeps us from catching back up. And I would love to do that sometime, especially if you've got that really burning success story or something that is been absolutely detrimental that you have turned around. I would love for you to unpack that with us, and let's hear how you had this horrible situation and some strategies you use, because I think that's how we all can relate to the work that you do, and it helps. I know when I can put myself into a situation, be like, all right, that sounds like me. It really helps my ears come up, and then your strategies mean more to me. So hopefully, you and I can reconnect at some point in time and do that, Regina. And I really
Yeah, I
appreciate.
certainly have a few more stories.
Yeah,
Just like,
I would
yeah,
love to do I would like to do like a case study or something other from one
right,
of your clients. It's okay. We can change the names to protect the innocent if we need to, but
right.
I'd
Yeah,
love to have you back on so people can see the work that you do come to life and through a case study. So let's think about that as we're moving forward. Maybe this we can jump back in and do that at some point in time.
yeah. And in the meantime, if people are interested, they could also check out my book and read a few of those about a few of
Yeah.
those stories. It's called "Living My Freaking Amazing Life," and the subtitle is "Create the Life That's Perfect for You Anywhere in the World." So it's a combination of my real life
Yeah.
stories, my real life experiences, many adventures as well, some great adventures, and the leadership wisdom I gained from those experiences.
Yeah.
It's an inspirational book at the same time, but also a leadership book because it's about, yeah, that wisdom that unique wisdom each of us has to lead ourselves and others um, in a different way after having those experiences. Let's put it this way.
I think you've inspired me to read your book, and then I'll find a couple stories in there that I want to hear more about, and I'll reach out for you and get you back on here to help me unpack a couple of those. That's probably the best way for me to learn more about you, and then have the insight from my side that would really help us move the conversation. So, thank you,
Yeah,
Regina.
it sounds like a plan. Thank you
Yeah,
for
appreciate.
your interest. Yeah,
Yeah,
thanks so much for having me on and for having this conversation. It's been a
yeah,
pleasure.
absolutely. Thank you.